At this breakout session, our presenter here this afternoon is Imam Muhammad Musri. The topic is Muslims, America, and Religious Freedom. And I'll introduce just a little bit more Imam Musri here in just a moment. My name is Sean Hopkin. I'm a professor of religious education here at Brigham Young University and am associate coordinator of the Council of Inter-Religious Outreach. About a year ago, I wrote an article after a study and a bunch of interviews with Muslims who attend here at Brigham Young University, Muslims Among Mormons, which had a nice alliteration to it. Whether the article was good or not, we're not sure. But anyway, so it's a real privilege and honor to be here and to be able to moderate the session. So my role is to just very briefly introduce Imam Musri, and then after his presentation, there will be time for questions and answers, and I'll be the microphone carrier and moderator at that point. So just a few words about Imam Musri. He serves as Senior Imam, President and Chairman of the Board of the Islamic Society of Central Florida. He is President and Chairman of a variety of important interfaith and community organizations. I started to list them. They're in the back, in his bio in the back of the program, and that would have taken about 5 minutes of his presentation time. So he was successful. One of the things he's well known across the nation for is he was successful in stopping the Florida pastor from burning the Quran in 2010. He's a national speaker on various topics about Islam, religious diversity, interfaith work, and the history and culture of the Middle East. He's represented American Muslims on national and international radio and television. Since 2006, he produced a weekly television program titled Islam on Bright House Network's cable and is a co-host of the Three Wise Guys, I think that's Wise Guys, not Wise Guys, weekly radio program on an NPR affiliate in Florida. So we're thrilled to have Imam Musri here with us this afternoon. Let me briefly say he is speaking to the general session tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. on interfaith cooperation to promote religious freedom in Muslim majority countries. So I want to make sure you're aware of that and able to attend that. I'll now pass the time to Imam Musri.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and I really treasure taking the time to be with you here. And I'm going to try to keep it brief, but I'll show you a few videos to kind of put you in the context of where Muslims in America today are. And you know, if you're a Muslim, you feel imprisoned or trapped, and you feel these attacks are coming from every direction. And a lot of people say, you know, why are Muslims attacking us? And American Muslims are not attacking. They are really in a situation that other communities have gone through before. It is kind of rite of passage for any community in America to have to pay their dues, and until the general public is familiar with that faith community, they're going to get a lot of bad rap. I want to start first with in a recent conference that Imams and evangelicals, I will talk about tomorrow, we had a research firm, that's evangelical research firm, do this presentation, and I asked their permission to share it. They emailed it to me and said, yeah, it's out there. So I'm not going to go through the entire PowerPoint they have, but kind of give you what their findings were from 1,000 pastors and 1,000 Americans. In this survey, there was a question about, do you agree that Christianity and Islam should seek to coexist in America? And 66% said yes. And that is strongly, 38% strongly agree, and 28% somewhat agree. But there is still a large percentage who don't think so. And 7 out of 10, they know a Muslim person among pastors. Which of the following characteristics would you use to describe Islam? Fundamental different from Christianity, 83%. Now, for those who are in religious studies and really know extensively about Islam, I would say that would be contrary to the truth, that there is so much overlap, maybe perhaps over 90% between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But to the 1,000 pastors that were surveyed, they feel 83% they are fundamentally different. And 52% think it's dangerous, that Islam is dangerous. 46% think Islam is spiritually evil. Only 17% think it's similar to Christianity. Only 30% believe that Islam creates peaceful society. In other words, 70% don't. Contrast that with the general American public view. While about a quarter of Americans agree that ISIS is a true identification of an Islam-controlled society, for pastors, 44% think that. And that is, so the idea here is if the leaders, the faith leaders, have a certain perception, certain understanding, and they are influencers, they're going to talk to a lot of people and promote it, and they are very trusted. Religious leaders are very trusted source of information for many people. Then we do have a problem. And that's why we're trying hard to engage with evangelical leaders to have a conversation, and we find many roadblocks. So, now, this is a sample of just 1 second.
Is a political system bent on world domination, not a religion.
I believe it is time for us to lay aside political correctness and identify the belief system that is responsible for these horrific acts. And that is the evil religion of radical Islam. That is the belief system that inspired this tragedy. And make no mistake about it, Islam is just not another way to approach God. Islam is a false religion, and it is inspired by Satan himself.
I know the achievement sounds extreme, but I'm not shrinking back from its implications. The fact is that America was founded, I'm going to stagger you right now, America was founded in part with the intention of seeing this false religion destroyed. And Islam is an anti-Christ religion that intends through violence to conquer the world.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us.
And just for the sake of time, the video is much longer. Probably most of you heard Mr. Trump's suggestion on shutting down Muslims from overseas. Now, as a result, we see that there is an increase, sharp increase in the number of hate groups across the country, and the Southern Poverty Law Center put them almost near 1,000 now. So, there is about 892 hate groups in the country that, according to the FBI, in meetings with the FBI, they told us that Islam is now #1 on their list, that it is the #1 target. Traditionally, it was Judaism, and that is something. If we scroll down this, probably you see a map of different groups. Okay. Yeah. Now, what really alarms us is this kind of video.
A lot of us here are using either pig's blood or bacon grease on our bullets, packing it in the middle, so that when you shoot a Muslim, they go straight to hell. That's what they believe in their religion. Don't fuck with white people. You see?
Yeah, I see it. What if there's a group of them? Then how would you do it?
The next step in jihad does not involve random sporadic attacks. They start killing people. They start slaughtering people wholesale. Do you really expect me to stand here and wait till we get to that point? I'm not going to wait till we get to that point. I'm going to start doing something about it now.
Heavy Irving police presence, including SWAT on standby, as members of the Bureau on American Islamic Relations, or BEAR, take what they call a stand outside the Islamic Center of Irving.
We're here protesting Syrian refugees coming to America, protesting the Islamization of America.
It's a boiling pot. The top is on this kettle really, really tight. And it is going to blow.
Oh, there we go. So that's David, right? David and his crew are preparing for what they call an Arab Rising, where they fear thousands of Muslims would take to the streets in Texas. He agreed to take me out to where they train.
A protest could very easily turn into a battle in like 1 second. And it'd be a street battle. So that's one thing we pray for. Now, if you get to the point where there's an Arab Spring, there's a lot of radical Muslims here, they all decide to hit the streets at one time. That's totally different than being at a protest. That's going to be more of a battlefield type situation. We had 2 ISIS terrorists come to Garland, Texas, where I grew up.
Do you know the radicals? I get the sense you do.
I know some of them. Yeah, of course.
Then don't be afraid to tell me. Who are the radicals?
I've been telling people.
Who are the radicals?
Well, it depends on what level you're talking about.
Doesn't matter. Who are the radicals?
Let's see, Mohammed al-Abiri, he was a Homeland Security advisor. The radical people in Europe are the same radical Islamic people we have here. They're not just like a different breed. They are the same people. And if they're doing it over there, they're going to do it here too.
Fear and distrust of Muslims has long existed in the U.S., particularly since 9/11. Recent ISIS attacks in Europe have only escalated tensions. But lately, anti-Muslim rhetoric is being used as a tool of politics.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
We need to be directing our efforts at stopping that from happening, stopping isolated communities from festering jihadists.
So we better start getting tough, and we better start getting vigilant, and we better start using our heads, or we're not going to have a country, folks.
In the past year, hate groups in America have grown by 14%. Texas is home to more than any other state. Isolated attacks on Muslims have surged. Several months ago, a man came to this shop, yelling anti-Muslim slurs. A week later, he returned, pulled out his handgun, and opened fire. A bystander was killed. Brian, an employee, was shot in the back during the encounter.
I heard the bullets hitting the rims and like the, and between the cars, I was just like, wow, it was shot. And once I felt that first bullet, every bullet I heard after that, I felt it like if it was hitting me.
That's the dent? One of the bullets that hit?
Yeah.
Okay. And where was he shooting from?
Over there.
So you shot from over there and it hit here?
Yeah. He was shooting all across there.
How many rounds did he shoot?
Actually, it was a whole bit, though. It was quite a bit. I'm not sure.
He was just going non-stop. Omar, the shop owner, ran out with his gun and fired back.
I finished all the bullets in there.
How many?
13 bullets. Yeah,
did he get hit?
Oh yeah, he did.
Omar says he must be armed and vigilant. He believes attacks on Muslims will only get worse.
I always carry my gun with me, It's normal to me. I don't care. If I don't have a gun with me, it bothers me. Mr. Donald Trump, Mr. Obama, I don't care. This is gonna be like this forever. Till the world ends. I mean, it's life. You like it or not?
So this is the Richardson Mosque. It's a place where David Wright and his crew have been protesting. I'm going to go and talk to the Imam and see what he has to say. Imam Spendam Nakaju fears for the safety of his community. Bear showed up to his mosque with a gun.
I think that it's almost as though they're kind of like waiting for this opportunity. I think we're going to take America back, and we're going to do so by purging, these minorities. That's the feeling I get, to be quite frank. I mean, I know still America is the land of, laws, and there's constitution and enforcement and so on and so forth. But
something's been brewing.
It's brewing. The concern is that if there's really that many of folk who are supportive of a public display of xenophobia towards Muslims, towards Hispanics, towards, minorities in that sense, who knows, it's a ticking time bomb. It's scary.
As Bear prepared for another protest, a battle erupted on social media, this time between the members of Bear and the Black Panthers.
The Dallas police asked us to postpone it and have a meeting with them and the Nation of Islam and see if we can come to a diplomatic solution before protesting, because they were afraid that it was going to start a race riot. And our protest was not about race. It was about radical Islam being a problem in America. But the people in South Dallas from the Black Panthers and some other groups in that area decided to make it about color, black and white. And it was never about black and white.
So I'm over here looking at David's Facebook page, and it's just a few days before the protest, and I'm seeing lots of pushback from the Nation of Islam and the Black Panthers. I'm noticing comments like, Black Power, death to crackers. It seems like things are getting very intense.
We're not going to take these threats and these actions by domestic terrorists, the Nation of Islam, and their militant wings like the Black Panthers and the Fruits of Islam, who threaten to kill white people, white babies, and cops.
You can't come into South Dallas and think you're going to intimidate us with weapons. This was a people's victory against Barrett. This was a people's victory from right-wing thinkers like Donald Trump and other folks like that. That you're not going to come down here to South Dallas, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Dixon Circle, Pleasant Grove, West Dallas, East Dallas,
In the wake of this conflict, the Muslim community often finds itself paralyzed, if not with fear, then indecision about what to do. I met with students at home.
So that is really a quick kind of context to where we are. There is a great deal of fear within the Muslim community right now. This past Saturday, a man was shot in front of the mosque as he went to morning prayers in Houston. There were 3 incidents in Orlando where I am. 2 imams were attacked, and one in front of his house, one in front of Walmart, and a third person was attacked also in front of the mosque. It wasn't an imam. So there is the feeling that for Muslims today, they need to change their names, to change their clothing, to kind of melt away into the population, even though a lot of Muslims are hard to recognize, meaning there could be half of you Muslims we don't know because they come in every shape and color. But those who are easy to recognize, who have Middle Eastern features, or women who are wearing headscarves. My wife is a physician, she wears a headscarf, so it's easy to recognize there. And even in the hospital, she was attacked by patients who felt threatened by her presence. So there's a lot of tension right now for Muslims everywhere. And to us, there's these big concepts about religious freedom that define nuances of it. And then there is the real religious freedom. Can you actually go to the mosque safely? Half of the congregation skipped the mosque during the highest season in Ramadan 3 weeks ago when the mass shooting happened in Orlando. Even though that person never attended any of our mosques, they were known to us, and but we got tons of threats, a lot of it from out of the city, from other states, especially Texas, that were threatening, we're going to kill you all, we know where you are, on and on and on. And we get routinely groups that come and demonstrate in front of the mosque and tell us, you're all going to hell, and go home, go back to such and such countries. And that, to us, is right now a matter of survival, a matter of can we actually build a community without fear and be able to practice our basic religious rituals in our houses of worship, or go out to a grocery store or to the public school without harassment. A lot of our kids in public schools are getting harassed. Young kids telling their classmates, you terrorists, go back to Libya, go back to Iraq. Even though these kids are American kids born here, grew up here, but this is now part of the routine that they're going through. So we look to interfaith relationships to try to build a response to this, how we can educate our neighbors and the community, the general community, about Islam, to see the similarities, the shared history, the shared commandments, the shared prophets. Talk about the reality that there are extremists in every group, and in Islam there are extremists that are acting out violently, and their prime target are Muslims. If you look at the attacks that just happened this last week, one in Istanbul at the airport, most of the people who were killed and injured were Muslims. The attacks that happened on Sunday in Baghdad, 250 people were killed and hundreds others were wounded, also Muslims. The attack that happened in Medina, near the Prophet's Mosque, also were Muslims. So the attacks are happening all the time against mainstream Islam, by radical groups, extremist groups, who have political agenda trying to push society in a certain radical direction, and they're facing resistance from the populations. But that doesn't get as much coverage as, say, events in Paris or Brussels or Orlando or San Bernardino, and that is why many folks in this country think that there is a war between Muslims and America, when it is really, there are radicals, Muslim radicals attacking Muslim majority populations, and there are radicals in every faith community out there that they don't get covered based on the religion. For example, we don't know the religion, or I don't know the religion of the mass shooter at Sandy Hook Elementary School, who killed 20 children and 6 teachers. Religion is not brought into the discussion because the name is not Arabic or Muslim name. Same thing with the Charleston shooter who killed 9 people at the church. Same thing with the theater shooter in Aurora, Colorado. And on and on. There are mass shootings that are happening every week. But the one that happens to have a Muslim name, then it becomes a religious issue. And how the media handles it irresponsibly, bringing religion into the mix, really encourages more young people to be radicalized, as well as encourages other people to feel this attack by Muslims against America and against non-Muslims. So I want to stop here to have a discussion, conversation, answer questions about where Muslims are in America today and what kind of religious freedom we're talking about right now.
First of all, let's thank Imam Musri for that presentation. Just a couple of brief guidelines as we move into the question and answer portion. We have about 10 minutes. Can I ask you to keep your questions brief, so not a lecture followed by a question, and then if you'll wait for the microphone so that the recording will pick you up, that'd be wonderful. We're going to start here and then we'll come next here.
I think as American citizens, we'd like to know what mainstream Islam is doing to thwart the efforts of radical Islam.
Entire countries are part of a coalition. The United States government works with Egypt, with Turkey, with Saudi Arabia, with Jordan, with Malaysia, Indonesia, with hundreds of millions of people, with Pakistan. So when you look at the percentage of these radical violent people compared to the population, it's very small, group. Say 200 million people live in Pakistan, Pakistanis. The radical groups are very small, but their target is the society and the government. Right? But the news media here does not cover all the events, all the thousands of Muslims who die at the hands of extremists who are politically motivated. Turkey, for example, had it's about 85 million people. They had a bombing in Ankara. They had a bombing in Istanbul at the airport. It's not the first time. And this group, ISIS, is targeting Turkey because Turkey is part of NATO and part of the coalition, and it's actually waging war on ISIS. So they are doing guerrilla war to try to hurt the Turkish economy. So if they hit the airport, Istanbul airport, one of the busiest, third busiest in Europe, then tourists are going to come. And about $30 billion are generated from tourism alone. So if they can hit Turkey, repeat and say it's not safe to invest there, it's not safe to live there, it's not safe to visit there, then this is their way of response. They don't have an army-to-army ability, but they had one individual blowing up himself and then causing fear and chaos. Now, Turkey is 99% Muslim, and their victims are Muslim, and the society is, for the most part, is secular and mainstream, and they are totally against ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but the reality is, as it's very hard in this country to prevent acts of mass shooting or acts of terrorism, it is the same in Saudi Arabia or in Turkey or in Malaysia or any country.
There was it was the hand I was coming to next here. Well, there was someone here.
But go ahead, Kate.
All right.
Is Sharia law God's law? And if it's God's law, is it higher than the United States Constitution? And what allegiance would the typical Muslim pay to either Sharia law or the United States Constitution?
Very good question. The word Sharia means law. It's an Arabic word that is translated as law. So the phrase Sharia law is redundant. Okay? And when you hear someone on the news saying that, that means they don't know much about the topic. So you can say in Arabic, American Sharia, meaning American law, French Sharia, English Sharia, Jewish Sharia, Christian Sharia, means the law of these countries or these religions. Are there Muslims in this country trying to establish Sharia law or Sharia in this country? No, not to my knowledge. I haven't come across any individual or group who's trying. And the reason is because Sharia is not applied in so-called Muslim majority countries. So if you go to Egypt or Turkey or Pakistan, or none of these countries actually apply the religious law, if we are referring to the Islam religious law. They are applying a mixture of secular law, British law, French law, it's a hodgepodge of many laws. Just as we in this country, we borrow ideas from other places, and indeed the Founding Fathers borrowed a lot from Islamic law, because at the time, the Ottoman Empire was a superpower, was an empire, and it had a federal system. And a lot of the laws that we see are really very identical or very close to what Islam proposes. Okay, a representative democracy, justice for all, citizenship for people regardless of their faith or no faith, and so on. The impression that there are people who are trying to advance Sharia law is coming from specific hate groups, okay, that have gone from state house to state house, about 23 or 24 states, and enacted a law to prevent the application of a Sharia law, of something that nobody is trying to apply. As a Muslim, if you give me the preference between, and say, which is closer to Islamic law, the religious law, the US Constitution or the Egyptian Constitution? I would say the US Constitution is much closer to Islamic law, as it is contained in our scripture, than it is to Egyptian law, which is has more, military law and not much democracy. Same thing with Saudi Arabia. It's a monarchy, and in Islam we don't have a monarchy. Same thing with many other Muslim nations. So there is no Muslim nation today, or Muslim majority country, that is applying Sharia, Islamic law, correctly, and the laws that they have on their books right now and they follow, they are not close enough, or not as close as the US Constitution to Islam. So as a Muslim, my version of Sharia would be American law. I wish they will apply it in those Muslim majority countries.
Thank you. Let's come here.
So I live here in Provo, Utah, and can you give some practical suggestions on things that we could do that would help ease the burden that Islams in America are feeling? Like, are there things that you could suggest that I could do, even though I live so far away from?
Most effective is to know a Muslim neighbor or colleague, you know, and to know them as a person, build friendship. Instead of getting your news from, you know, CNN or Fox or MSNBC, get it from your neighbor, okay? Who have a family, who have children, who goes to work, who teaches at the university or works at the hospital, you know. Give you an example. When this incident happened, this mass shooting in Orlando, I oversee 10 mosques in Orlando, and I asked all the imams that work with me, nobody knew that person who committed that mass murder. He wasn't practicing Muslim. He never showed up to the mosque. He was a drinker. We don't drink. He was gay. We don't recognize homosexuality. And yet everybody said he is a Muslim. Now, among the people responding to the shooting, the head of the SWAT team, the captain, is a Muslim, okay, who went in, engaged the person, saved lives, rescued the hostages, and so on. But nobody would know him because his name is Mark Canty, okay? I mean, it's not Muhammad Abdullah. So people say, well, he's not Muslim, but he is. He attends my mosque. I know him personally. I know his family. The hospital down the street where all these victims were rushed to, some of them, you know, were injured and walked into the hospital. Orlando Health has 8 hospitals. The chief operating officer of the hospital is a Muslim doctor. The trauma surgeon is a Muslim. You have hundreds of Muslims working in the hospital. Right? And people don't see the first responders who saved the lives as Muslims. Again, they may not recognize their names or see from their features that they are different. I mean, he is a tall, white fellow. Looks like him. So how would you, he doesn't have a beard, you know, if he didn't actually speak Arabic with me, I wouldn't know that he was. But he attends my mosque too. So people need to know the real Muslims, the hundreds in every community. I can say it without reservation. Go to any city, any major hospital, and you're going to find a lot of doctors. Okay? Because the majority of those who migrated to this country in the last century were doctors, engineers, scientists. They were not laborers. Okay? They had to come on a flight, not on a boat. They didn't cross the border, you know, walking. They had a visa. They were investigated, screened by the FBI, by the State Department before they stepped foot in this country. And they are contributing. They are working hard. They are contributing tremendous billions of dollars in taxes. They're creating jobs. These are the real American Muslims. But the people only see from the news, you know, a young man who gone crazy, brainwashed, and stereotype everybody.
I know there are a lot that we're going to miss, and unless we were going to do, can we do a 5-second question, a 30-second response? How's that? Is that okay? All right, this will be it.
We've been fortunate to have many very close friends who are Muslims, and I would agree with you that it's more that we have 90% in common and 10% differences than otherwise. One of the things that our community did, we're from Fort Wayne, Indiana, but the mosque there hosted an evening for the Christian and Jewish friends in the community where they taught us about the religion, and I thought that was very effective. They did a wonderful job with that, and I think, so I'm more giving a personal experience in asking a question, but I think that that was a really good way to increase the understanding among the religions, and I am sure that other imams would probably be happy to host something like that if there was a genuine interest in it.
We have open door policy. We don't check people at the door. You know, if you're Muslim, you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're atheist, we don't check if they are FBI agents or they're reporters. You know, people come and they sit, you know, and after many of my sermons on Friday, people come and introduce themselves who they are. It doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, we have an open policy. Come. We don't have any secret meetings. Everything is open to the public. Anybody can attend and can hear it. We do regular, programs, especially during Ramadan, and we do at least once a month open house with food and give people the opportunity to socialize, you know, to get to know, to answer their questions. And we find it as a helpful way for people who have questions to do it. But, you know, for many people, they can pick up their phone and, you know, ask Siri about Islam. Say, Siri, what is Islam? You'll get an answer. I mean, it's not like it's a secret society. It is, there's 1.7 billion people, and just like there are 2 billion Christians, you know, do I need to find a Christian to know what Christianity is? You can go on the internet anytime, and you'll find out a lot of information and decide for yourself. Is it similar? Is it different? Is it compatible? Many people say, no, Muslims can't live in America. They have been in America since before America was established, you know. So they have served in the armed forces. They are still serving the armed forces. They are in government, in Homeland Security, the FBI, in the State Department, the Defense Department, you know. But again, people don't know because they never met that person who went out of their, by the way, I'm your Muslim doctor. I'm just your doctor. I don't care. You know, my religion doesn't matter. I have to serve you regardless of your religion too.
All right, I've been moderating poorly. I got fixated on the top of the hour. We actually do have a few more minutes. So I'm going to come to the back for a question, then I'm going to come up to the front for a question here for our last two questions. There's been a few hands standing back here. Any of you that are okay? All right, yeah, let's go over there.
Sort of a follow-on to the last question, and you actually answered a lot of the questions I had. But what, if you were to point us to the best resource, you know, we have a hard enough time getting people to read our own scripture, let alone Muslim scripture. But if you were to point people to the best resource, where would you say go here to find out, you know, sort of some of the basics and how to learn? Because the best way to deal with a lot of these issues, I think, is to overcome ignorance.
You know, like in Orlando, we do a radio show, me and the president of the Board of Rabbis and the minister, and we talk every week about issues. So people, as they drive, they can listen to it. They don't have to make an effort to go to any website or pick up a book to read about it, but then they just get that perspective. And the feedback always that we get is, you know, sometimes we can't tell who's talking, which religion, because they are so similar, and it's in fact so similar. So on the local level, have a friend, a Muslim friend, have a Jewish friend, have a Hindu friend. If you want to know about something, you have to have a friend from that culture or that faith community and engage with them. Ask them questions. They're more willing to answer. Second is really take the time to know about other people. Because if you read a little bit, there are a lot of YouTube videos, there are a lot of good websites. You know, our website is american-islam.org, has a lot of information, simple Q&A about the basics.
Could you say that again a little slower?
America.islam.org.
American-islam.org. American-islam.org. So there are there are a lot of resources available, free resources everywhere. But we just have to make small effort to take.
American-Islam.org, correct? Okay. So I'm going to come here with a question, then I'm going to come back to this gentleman if we have time.
I'm actually partially responsible for the meeting. We started, Colin came to Orlando, Florida, and we started a freedom of religion. And we had 8 different religions. We had Hindu, we had Buddhist, we had Catholic, we had Mormons, we had Baptists, and a panel. And we're starting to work on this year's. They all wanted to get together and do it again. We're talking about how we can do it. Can we have classes that people can actually come and find out what they can do to promote freedom of religion? The hospital, I'm on the hospital board also. And the CEO, the chief operating officer, is a very good friend of mine, Muslim. They did a fantastic job in this. And get a group together, start a freedom of religion in your area. And they come in, you know, kind of skeptical of what's going to happen, what are they going to do to my religion, etc. But by the time we got through, they all wanted to get together again and carry on. So there are things you can do.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I'm wondering if what spawns the fear and the anger and the mistrust that was displayed in the video from those militiamen in Texas is, from my personal observation, a significant amount of the public perceives that the prime directive of Islam is world dominance, even by force if necessary, and that the Quran supports subduing the infidel, anybody who's not a part of Islam. And I think that's the perception that a lot of people have that creates that mistrust. I'd like to comment on that.
Well, if you travel to the Middle East and you ask ordinary people, they'll have the reverse. They'll say, you know, Desert Storm and the Iraq War and all these wars that the U.S. invading the Middle East and Europe, you know, England and France for the last 100 years invading North Africa and the Middle East, Muslim majority countries, are all attempts to Christianize the Muslim world, and that they have killed massive number of people who didn't like that. So that public perception is not based in reality. It is, from their perspective, America is a Christian nation, and that whatever George Bush did or whatever Barack Obama is doing, they're all part of a religious conspiracy to create a Christian empire all over the world, dominate the world. But for us living here, we know that this has nothing to do with it. You know, the government is not a religious organization trying to do these objectives. Most of these people, their own countries, are not practicing Islam. So if they want to start, they should start there, convert their own nations to Muslim countries. So these narrow views of extremists on all sides have to be squashed by the fact that it's not true. It's a myth. The majority of people have to speak up and say, these people don't represent us. It's easy for us here to say these militiamen don't represent the American people by and large, but if you see it from the other side of the world, they do, and vice versa. So I do not know of any plan or program or, you know, while, for example, many American churches have massive budgets for evangelizing or proselytizing around the world, right? There's no such thing in the Muslim world. No budgets, no groups, no missionaries, no training. It is people don't care. You know, when you have 1.7 billion people are Muslim, you don't care if you're going to have another 50 million or 100 million. It's like, just wait a couple of years or 10 years and you'll have them anyway. So it's a myth to think that, you know, those times of the empires are gone. You know, based on religion, that we're pushing borders to try to expand and create one religion empire. Right now, all societies are very diverse, very, pluralistic, and very secular in general. Have very kind of similar laws. They learn from each other. Something happens here, you see it happening immediately there. They copy each other. Same rules, same laws, law enforcement. So I would say there's no real evidence. Scientists, researchers can look into this and tell you there is no evidence to back up these myths, these assumptions at all.
All right, I'm afraid that we need to be done. I want to mention a couple of resources for those of you who live here in Utah. First, the Wilkinson Student Center has a dedicated room, dedicated as a prayer room, and there are typically, I'm not sure about during the summer, but there are typically Friday services offered there, a prayer service there. There is also the largest mosque close by is the Khadija Islamic Center up in West Valley. I'm grateful to this gentleman for pointing that out. So if you wanted to visit that Islamic Center, that mosque there, West Valley Mosque would pull that up, and you can go and learn more about your Muslim neighbors. Imam Musri, thank you so much for your time with us today. We're so grateful for your time.